Hey everyone, welcome back to the Written with Purpose author series for 2021. I'm Njeri and this is author interview number 4 with the lovely Francesca Ekwuyasi. I have to just tell you, there is going to be a lot of gushing in this video. There will be a lot of gushing. Why? Because, oh my gosh, butter honey pig bread was just, you know what? I'll just let Njeri, book review Njeri of the past, let you know why I love this book so much and why I was so excited to speak to Francesca Ekwuyasi. You can click here or somewhere up here to see my review of the best book of 2021 so far and one of the best books I've ever read in my life. And I've been around because I was born in a decade. So who's Francesca Ekwuyasi? Francesca Ekwuyasi is a writer and multidisciplinary artist from Lagos, Nigeria. Her work explores themes of faith, family, queerness, consumption, loneliness, and belonging. Francesca's debut novel, Butter Honey Pig Bread, was longlisted for the 2020 Giller Prize, was a finalist for CBC's 2021 Canada Reads competition, is a finalist for a 2021 Lambda Literary Award, shortlisted for the 2021 Governor General's Award, and the 2021 Amazon Canada's First Novel Award. She be doing things, okay? Her writing has been published in Winter Tangerine Review, Brittle Paper, Transition Magazine, The Malahat Review, Visual Arts News Volume 1, Brooklyn, Guts Magazine, The Puritan, Canadian Art, and elsewhere. Her story, Orun is Heaven, was longlisted for the 2019 Journey Prize. Supported through the National Film Board's Filmmakers Assistance Program and the Fabienne Collat Foundation, Francesca's short documentary Black and Belonging has screened in festivals in Halifax, Toronto, and Montreal. That is all about Francesca, and I have to now let you know about Butter Honey Pig Bread, which took my heart. If I wore wigs, it would have snatched them. It was just a wonderful, wonderful book. Butter Honey Pig Bread is a story of choices and their consequences, of motherhood, of the malleable line between the spirit and the mind, of finding new homes and mending old ones, of voracious appetites, of queer love, of friendship, faith, and above all, family. Francesca Ekwuyasi's debut novel tells the interwoven stories of twin sisters Kehinde and Taye and their mother Kambirinachi. Kambirinachi feels she was born an Obanje, a spirit that plagues families with misfortune by dying in childhood to cause its mother misery. She believes that she has made the unnatural choice of staying alive to love her human family and now lives in fear of the consequences of that decision. Some of Kambirinachi's worst fears come true when her daughter Kehinde experiences a devastating childhood trauma that causes the family to fracture in seemingly irreversible ways. As soon as she's of age, Kehinde moves away and cuts contact with her twin sister and mother. Alone in Montreal, she struggles to find ways to heal while building a life of her own. Meanwhile, Taye, plagued by guilt for what happened to her sister, flees to London and attempts to numb the loss of the relationship with her twin through reckless hedonism. Now, after more than a decade of living apart, Taye and Kehinde have returned home to Lagos to visit their mother. It is here that the three women must face each other and address the wounds of the past if they are to reconcile and move forward. This was an exquisite book, and I thoroughly relished my discussion with Francesca, and I hope you do too. Let's just start with me professing my undying bookish love for you and for Butter Honey Pig Bread, which is one of the best books I've read in my life. And so far, my favorite book of 2021. So let's just start with your girl had me crying in the street, listening to the audiobook, bawling in the streets of Toronto, okay? You had my mouth watering with those recipes. You had me laughing. I had my first bookish crush with Salome,
Salome.
Salome. And this cover art is amazing. And is it what is her name? She's a Trinidadian artist.
Yes, Brianna McCarthy.
Yeah, Brianna McCarthy, and she's amazing. And so fuck. Thank you. This was wonderful. I just need to love on you because, and then even in your bio where you talk about like, is it families and queerness and consumption and food, and I'm just like, you know what? Sometimes you read a book and the book is like, hi reader, I was made specifically for you. Like, other people might like this book, but this book was written for you. Like, this book was written for me. I know we don't know each other, but like, it's mine. I claim it, and anyone else who has a pleasure to read it does so, you know, at my pleasure. Okay. So let's just start there. I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy that you were like part, like one of the finalists for Canada Reads and everything, because that's how I found out about the book. And then I saw the cover and I was like, I know that artist, so any book with that cover on it, I'm gonna first I'll buy. And then I read the back and I was like, oh my God. And then Canada, and then Nigeria, and then all the things. It was all put together, and thank you. So that's my intro.
Thank you. Oh my God. Oh, I could cry. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So, who are you? Because this is your debut novel, and like, you live in Atlantic Canada, and I think, yes, you live in Atlantic Canada. You are Nigerian born. And like, your writing takes in all those pieces, right? Because there's Nova Scotia, and then there's Nigeria, and then there is Canada, and like, just all of this stuff. So just let's start with, who is Francesca? How did you come to writing? But mostly, like, who are you and why are you so awesome? I'll stop talking.
Okay, so this, I can't thank you enough, honestly, because it just means the most to me when like other Black friends get it. That's, you know, so I don't, thank you. But yes, my name is Francesca. I was born in Lagos, Nigeria, and I moved to North America when I was about 17 for university. I moved to upstate New York. And I come from a big family. Me and my siblings and cousins were raised by our grandmother. And we're all artists, truly, including my grandmother, including my birth mother and late father. My brother's a music producer. We all just sort of have, a practice, whether or not we like formally pursue it. So I feel particularly lucky that writing is something that I love and I'm so grateful for. And you can do something for yourself and that's enough. But there's something extra for me when other people that look like me or maybe live like me, or even when they're completely opposite from me, just other people, when they find something I've made to resonate with their lives, that's like just truly the the gift. So yeah, I am 31. I was born in 1990, and recently I heard somebody say that one of the youth they were working with referred to them as being born in the 1900s. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, I suppose I was born in the 1900s. But that's good. I think the 90s forever, that's fine. Yes, I moved to Canada about 8 years ago for graduate school. And I've just learned so much. I feel like I grew up, in many ways, early 20s to early 30s. That's like a chunk of time. And I spent that time here in Halifax. So I love this place more than I ever expected to. Since I moved here, I've been trying to leave. I'm really grateful to be here. Yeah, I like to write and I like to make art, any art in any way. Yeah.
Yes. So this is great. There's so much to get into, but I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about what gave you the idea to write this. What was your writing process? And let's talk about that before we actually get into the book itself. So,
Yeah.
how was this book born? And also just, you know, it's an exquisite book. So for your debut to be exquisite, award-winning, internationally renowned, that is a big deal. So tell us about the road to that place.
Okay, so I honestly, I feel very lucky, and I feel, all the cliches they say, you have to be a reader to be a writer. I, particularly when I was younger, was a very avid reader. This is Dumpling. She's a doggo.
Hi, Dumpling.
She's very gentle and affectionate, but she's being a little clingy at the moment. But yes, I am. Yeah, I was a voracious reader. My grandmother was an educator, so she is like one of the things I remember her like vividly encouraging in me since I was a small child. So reading is kind of how this book came to me. When I was in 2013, I went back home to Nigeria because my US visa was done. I had done everything I could. I had a liberal arts, a social science degree. So really, they weren't in a hurry to give me a work visa. So I worked for a year after graduation and I had to move home. And I moved home to do the National Youth Service Corps, which is this mandatory service. It's paramilitary in Nigeria. It's existed since I think the 60s, maybe.
Okay.
It's mandatory. Yeah, every university graduate who wants to work in Nigeria has to do it. And I went home to do that. I didn't want to, but I was just felt like I was out of options. And while I was home, I went back to my childhood library, which is a small privately owned library in the neighborhood I grew up in. I was just reading a lot of the same books I'd read as a teenager, as a young girl. And one of those, it was a collection of African poetry, and they had the poem Abiku by Wale Soyinka. And Abiku is like the Yoruba version, my interpretation anyways, of this spirit, this Ogbanje spirit, right? And I was reading Famished Road again by Ben Okri. I was reading What Americana by Chimamanda Adichie, and just so many Nigerian writers that I had loved as a young girl and was coming back to. And at that time, I had only written one short story, which exists online now, but I'd only written one and I wasn't sure. I thought my tone was too sentimental. Mm-hmm. But I decided to give it a go anyways, just to write the story of an Ogbanje who's chosen to stay alive. It evolved from there. Oh, and also, so the two things that I really wanted at the beginning was the Ogbanje and the story of twins. And so I was looking for a way to combine them. And I just started writing. And actually that first draft of the first few pages I lost almost immediately because I was using my brother's computer and the USB and I lost the USB. But it was something that I just kept at it. And I spoke it out. I said it to a friend I had made, this really incredible woman. She's an artist as well, named, her last name is Delphine Fawandu. She's an African-American and African photographer, filmmaker. And I told her, like, I want to write this story. I'm going to do it. And over the course of 7 years, I did. Yeah, that's how it came to be.
What parts of the story did you start with, and what kind of surprised you along the way as you were writing?
Yeah, so I definitely started with the first line of the book, which says, the first line, not the prologue, which says, if you ask Kambiri Nachi, this is how she'll tell it. Mm-hmm. So that was the very first line I started with. And Kambiri Nachi's heart, especially her childhood, was so exciting to me because yeah, it was just really exciting. I love to write about children experiencing the world.
Yeah.
And so then writing about a child who is not actually a human child, but Obanje who has multiple experiences of this world was really exciting to me. So yeah, that was the first part. And that came sort of, like it just came naturally or enthusiastically. And the parts that surprised me were writing about Thai, because I think I took a lot of risks, like both in like risks in my personal life and things I hadn't really seen that much. I'd seen a lot of Nigerian writing, so like writing colloquially, so like writing the way a Nigerian would speak for some characters, and then writing about queerness. And I was just surprised at how honest it was coming out. And I was like, this is okay. I'll go back and I'll edit. But you know, I ended up working with a wonderful editor, and those parts weren't really, she never said, tone this down, or that's too much, don't write about periods, you know, because I mean, to be fair, I had like lots of examples of African writers and Black writers writing in this tradition. So, but it was a surprise to me that it was allowed, that I could be allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think this is a good place to ask you to talk about and to describe Butter Honey Pig Bread. So tell us about this story. What's the story about? What's the book about?
So the book is the story of the lives of three women. A woman, Nachi, who believes she's an Ogbanje, and she's a Yoruba and Igbo woman. And Ogbanje is a folklore, it's from Igbo mythology or cosmology. And so she believes that this is who she is and her origin. And in the Ogbanje folklore, the spirit dies in childhood. Its purpose is to cause pain, but this character chose to stay alive. So it's sort of about her life and sort of walking into worlds, and it's about the lives of her daughters, which are sort of a consequence of her choosing to stay alive. It's about recovering or healing from trauma against all odds. It's about family and all kinds of relationships. And yeah, I guess it's about existing and being alive and trying to figure out how or why. Yeah.
I loved the book. There was so much. I'm just flipping it open. Like there was so much on the page, so much in the story that I found like so compelling, and evocative and funny. And I just, I just really, really love the depth of the characters. I loved the multiple points of view. I loved the intersecting plots. I loved the food. I had a favorite character. Tai was my favorite character. Like she made some decisions that I was like, really, friend? We're gonna do this? Is this what we're doing? And then I was like, okay, fine. But you still good. I loved her. I also loved the way that you took up trauma, and I think you had a really delicate touch in terms of how much of it was going to be on the page and how much of it would be referred to, and then how much of the trauma we would learn about through the healing of the trauma as opposed to the direct trauma. It was just really, really lovely. I find it a hard book to explain, and in explaining to people, like when people are like, oh my God, I heard you love this book, what do you love about it, and what was the book about? I was like, twins and Obanje. How do I go, like it's about everything, right? Like everything was just so important. But I think hold the line.
Attention please, this is your supervisory staff speaking. The alarm has been determined by the fire department as a false alarm. There is no emergency. The alarm is being returned to normal condition. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Just so that we're all
Oh, so there's no fire.
no fire, no emergency. The alarm is returned. It's great. What was your favorite scene to write? Who was your favorite character to create? And what was the scene or and this can be like, what was a moment that you struggled with when you were writing it? I know this was all sort of a span of 7 years, as you just said.
Yeah.
I would love to hear like those moments.
So my favorite scene. Oh, actually, yeah, it's just a small part. My favorite scene was where the twins kind of saw apparitions of each other. It's not explicit, but there's a part in both their stories where they're like, I saw my twin on the dance floor.
Yeah.
So that was my favorite part because I was imagining a very active and excited, but on both ends, because they were both out and they were both drinking. And I love that idea of apparitions. I was raised Catholic, so the idea of an apparition,
Sure.
I find powerful. And also just growing up, I was always hearing about how somebody saw somebody at the market only to go home and be told that they passed away, right? So this idea of we see each other, we have connections with each other. And, things, also silly things like I dream of someone and then they message me, things like that.
Yeah.
I wanted to play with that a bit, especially with like the
Yeah.
twinhood is it's fertile ground for a lot of that mysticism. My favorite character was Timmy, who is a friend, is a character that shows up later in the book and is friends with Tai, one of the three main characters. And I adore this character because I feel like I have a Timmy in my life, just a beautiful and fierce with an attitude, like Nigerian boy who's queer and like plays with gender and is free, but is also in some ways shackled by religion and expectations of religion. I know so many people like that.
Yeah.
So it felt really close to my heart to write to me. And yeah, I wanted to do him justice.
I really liked him, and I felt really sad when we couldn't find him, and I felt happy when he came back, and it was really nice to see him return, like to be in Lagos and to like be in the house and be like, oh hell no, like this is what we doing, like like just like, yes, you're an auntie, yes, I'll be good, but like I'm not letting any madness befall my friend. So I loved that character for sure. What did you struggle with in writing it?
Yes. So I really struggled with sort of writing this trauma that happened to Kende, because I've read books where, we've all read the books and watched the movies where like that sort of thing it's just, I don't like it. It hurts to read, to see. It just feels like an unnecessary hurt. I don't want to go into books go into like leisure or art being like, am I going to be upset for, so that part I wanted to be direct and honest, but not, hurt anyone reading it.
Mm-hmm.
So that part was really hard to find that balance. And also, I made some choices that I guess a more critical person might feel a way about, but I allowed the bad man character to be two flat bad man characters, as much as I had initially written some drafts that complicated him a bit more and complicated that kind of, because a lot of times the action and the perpetrator, you're like, what? But I just was like, no, actually this person can just be a flat bad man. There can be two just bad men, because it's more important for me, it was more important in this book to illustrate coping.
Yeah.
Even during, right? Coping during and after.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted it to be the idea of a witness that broke the character experiencing it, because, from initially, I wanted it to seem like it happened the one time, but then revealed later that actually it was the idea of having a witness that broke her. The idea of like a witness there and it not really making a difference, right?
Yeah.
That broke the character a bit. So that part was so hard. I hated it. I hated it so much. Yeah.
I did too. I think you did it really well. I think we had to go there, and you know, we got enough of the trauma to understand. I think, you know, when you trust the reader enough to fill in the blanks with their own experience or with their imagination, it really helps to explain why the sisters were so tormented in their own relationship with each other, especially as twins, how they were united by their mother's you know, whatever, possession, mental illness, identity, whatever. And it was important to see all of that, and it made a lot of sense, right? Everybody was troubled in the story in some way. And I don't know that the arc of the sisters coming together and trying to explain to each other the years of absence, I don't think that would have worked without some catalyzing experience that caused them to drive themselves apart, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense. And I think
Yeah.
once and I did notice that the focus, like this story was very much like women were the main characters.
Yeah.
And I really loved that. And it wasn't, like there was a bad man, but he was shadowed in many ways, right? And it was just like, yeah, there's a fact of a bad man, and we all, you know, we all have stories of bad men. And still we persist and we grow and we love and we do all of those things. Let's talk about consumption, because I have to say, I have never seen the word consumption used in a bio or a writer, and it was intriguing to me. So what's your thing with consumption? And yeah, I think that's really all I want to know is like, what does consumption mean to you, and what's your thing with it?
Yeah, so I think I'm somebody who, you know, content warning, have had a history with disordered eating. But the truth is I know so few women so few women, honestly, even in like a casual way, you know, yeah, even in my family, obsession and intense things that seem so normal to me. I was just remembering somebody in my life, an older person in my life, when I was a kid, used to have her teeth wired shut. That was super normal to me. And only recently, like this year, I was telling a friend, I was like, wait a minute, what? that is extreme, but that was so normalized. And I think for many people, it's so normalized. So this idea of eating, I love to eat. I've always had a big appetite. It's my favorite, you know, but then at the same time, I have this impulse because of, you know, other people's perceptions and just phobia in the world and existing as a woman. I feel like I'm always trying to control my appetites and be smaller. I'm not small. I'm not. But so that is always interesting to me. Some short stories I've written before have explored a little bit of just having characters obsessed a little bit about what they're eating, how they're eating it, when they're eating, sneaking around eating. So it's about like the actual consumption, but also about there's a way, I think, we consume other things like media, ideas, and between people, I like the idea of like trying not to consume each other and merge merge identity. So just literally that word and all the different meanings it can take, and primarily eating and bodies, like sensual consumption. But yeah, it has always been of interest to me in writing and in reading. Yeah, that's what that means for me.
Thank you for that. I have a history with disordered eating as well. And I think that it's not something I read about a lot in fiction, you know, and so there have been books along the way in nonfiction that talk about, like, in particular, Black women and eating disorders, and so on, but not so much in actual fiction. And I think I enjoyed particularly with Tai, like I enjoyed watching her make decisions about excess, and watching her like explore what some might call hedonism, watching her be okay with taking in different kinds of pleasures and delighting in those, and also understanding that her choices were choices that were born out of trauma and loneliness and self-sabotage, and also that was good. That thing I just did was really good, right? Whether it was drugs or food or alcohol or sex, or partying or like cooking or whatever, right? Like it was all a part of that. So yeah, thank you for explaining. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for asking.
No problem. Let's talk about my crush. Let's talk about Salome, because I was like, wow. I felt like Salome was a hero in a lot of ways, and was just kind of came on the scene and then sort of disappeared. But there were so many things I loved about Salome, and I could tell you, but I'm really interested in like how you developed Salome's character. And I feel like Salome was a really nice, I don't know if, I don't actually know what the word foil means, but I feel like it might apply here. I just feel like Salome was an answer to Cambrai Nachi, and like she just answered as a character a lot of gaps in many of the other characters.
Salome, I wish. So I adore that character because there's so much else about her that doesn't show up in the book. So lots of the editing, editing is actually, I think, one of the most important things in writing. But there's so much more about her because I wanted to illustrate, similar to Tai, just a really flawed person, super flawed and messy, and that's okay. I don't see a lot of Black female characters in fiction who are like so flawed, but you don't hate them. Because the few that I've read, I'm just like, girl, stop it. You're toxic. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me. But I really liked the character as I was writing her. And so the parts of the Don't Make It In is a bit more about her history, right? So she, and I think that's what makes it in, but she was, she was sober because she lived as an addict and was, irresponsible. And basically all the she knew, she'd lived, she was like late 30s, she'd done shit she knew. And I wanted her to just be like beautiful and loving, and I'm not looking beautiful like that, who cares, it's fiction, I don't know how people look, it's all everyone's imagination, but just a beautiful person, and like just really patient and loving, but very boundaried. I wanted her to be kind of the opposite of Tai, where Tai was learning just her own shape. Salome was like, I know my shape and it's a messy shape, and so these are the boundaries, right? There's also something that happens in Halifax that when you see someone for the first time ever, you're like, I've never seen this person before. For the rest of your life in Halifax, you will just see them everywhere. So that was the funny thing I wanted to show. But yeah, Salome was kind of a hero. Like, I like to use that word. She was kind of Tai's hero. And I had some conflict about making it romantic and sexual, right? But it worked for the character, it worked for Tai's character. Like, that's how she would have met someone like that. Especially like a gay woman. Like, there's no way Tai is going to meet a gay woman and not kind of end up as lovers before even becoming friends, like she did with Aiden. I don't know if that answers the question.
It did. That's perfect. I love that she was, worked at university and, was just like smart and community engaged and all of these things. So I think a university, because she did a presentation at a library, but she worked at the university. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, she did.
Yeah, it's like I'm just love. I love all of it. I love the sex scene. I love the cooking. I love the sex and the cooking together. It was.
That.
I was
I
like,
was so afraid.
You're afraid?
I was afraid. Yeah, I was like, that's a lot. That's kind of. I mean, is that not ideal? Like, is that not like fun and great? But I was afraid that folks would be like, no, this isn't literature. It's not literature. You know?
Yeah, no, I think it was great. My wife and I had our first kiss in the kitchen when she was making food, and it was hot. And I'm all for making out and having sex near or in kitchens with food involved. So it was wonderful. So that's just great. Can we talk about magic and magical realism? And I put that in quotes because I understand magical realism and its Latinx origins. And I just want to make sure that I'm not improper.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because I didn't know. Thank you.
Yeah, look it up. So what I've learned, and I haven't studied this, and I really should, because I love magical realism. But what I've learned is that the source of magical realism is Latinx, like the first magical realist writers, and the first time that term was used, it was used in relation to Latinx writers. And in reading a little bit about that, and I think that concept is contested, because people are saying, well, now that's a general term that we use to describe, these little subtle magical elements among the mundanity of our lives. But I had a Latinx reader explain it to me that, like, there's a link between magical realism and revolution, where it's not really, the whole point is that you're not waiting for like a spell and a wand all the time. Like, sometimes it is, an apparition in the grocery store. Sometimes it is, a dream, and maybe the Virgin Mary speaking to you while you're walking down the street, or maybe that was the wind. And that it actually is about those subtle moments, that those subtle moments are actually are more powerful, because you don't need to suspend disbelief in order to engage them. And revolution is similar in that way, right? Where it doesn't necessarily need to be this like one moment, and it never is just one moment. There might be a catalyzing event, but it is about these like little imaginings of what something better could be, what the destruction of something oppressive and the creation of something powerful and emancipatory could be. And so magical realism comes out of this kind of idea that, like, just these little moments of magic that cause you to question. You could walk by them, it could just be completely mundane, but maybe not. And it's living in that possibility, right? And that's actually the kind of fantasy. Like, I love high fantasy. I love second world, but I do love this mundane. Did I just see what I saw? Yes. I love that. I love it. I think that's the way most people experience magic. And yes. So how did you, and I'll also say, I'm glad you mentioned Ben Okri and The Famished Road, which I haven't read. But when I've talked about this kind of work, folks have recommended Ben Okri's work to me. Also, Patrice Malidome of Water and the Spirit.
Okay.
It's a spiritual autobiography of an African man who was raised by Jesuit priests and then returned to his village and went through a rite of passage as a means of spiritual decolonization. And it tells like the story of him going into the woods and like things happen. Yeah, it's very interesting. And many of the books that I've been attracted to over the past couple of years, like last year, or 2 years ago, I think 2019, one of my favorite books was Freshwater by Ekwuyasi, right? And I in my review of butter honey pig bread, I said that butter honey pig bread pairs really nicely with fresh water. In that, if people are read that one and enjoyed the magic in that, I think the magic in that is a little bit more obvious and on page, but like, but there's something about those books read together that's really really exquisite to me. So how did you decide how much magic you were going to sprinkle in this? And you answered it a little bit when you talked, Francesca, about like apparitions and your Catholic upbringing. I was also raised Catholic. Like there's a lot of similarities, I think, between our identities, which is why I was just like, you wrote the book for me and everybody else can claim it if they want, but they're wrong. So how did you decide, you know, what you were going to use as magic? And was there anything that you edited out that would have been like more intense magic?
I don't think so. I don't think there was anything else that was edited out. There's so many conversations between people that my editor was like, they said the thing, we can take this 10 pages out.
Yeah.
But in terms of the magic, I think in writing Cambirian as an Ogbanje, early on I made a decision not to use actual Igbo cosmology, because it's like it exists, right? Because I wanted to, have creative license and just make things up. And I also, as a Nigerian, like I'm Igbo and Yoruba, like my mother's side of the family is Igbo, Yoruba, my father's side of the family is Igbo. And on my mother's side, there's a lot of traditional religious practices. Like my mother's a priestess. And so in writing about any traditional beliefs, I didn't want to just hand it over. Sure. Because there's things I don't know, and there's things that other people shouldn't know if it's not for you. And so I was just like, I know the general story of Ogbanje, the general idea. Everyone growing up, people would use it as an insult for a misbehaving child or whatever. And so I wanted to, every bad child is a witch or an Ogbanje, So I wanted to just make it fiction. Which meant I had a lot of room to have like everyday magic, right? And I really wanted to play with perspective or perception. So where Cambirianachi is healing her father, where she makes that gesture, it's such a mundane thing to her. But I never want to tell you as the reader what to believe. You can either believe that happened, or believe that she's a very imaginative child. It doesn't actually matter, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. So I really wanted to have you blink and be like, wait, what? Each time, which meant it had to be subtle, and there had to be like just a little bit of doubt, because in real life, when we witness magic, and like when I say magic, sometimes the sky is so overwhelmingly beautiful. Yeah. I'm just like, stop. And I have to close my eyes and be like, wait, what? Like, it's so beautiful. Yeah. Nova Scotia, I'm sure is just so stunning. Sometimes the lakes, it's like, I feel like I'm inside of a Microsoft Word from the 90s, the screensaver. And I do have to shake my head and rub my eyes and be like, is this real? And I wanted that feeling, because we witness all kinds of magic all the time, and our brains just make it make sense. So that wasn't, the right amount was like the amount that you would casually witness or casually imagine. I don't know if you do this thing when I am extremely angry. Something happened when I was a teenager. A car drove really close to me, and it didn't hit me, but it kind of twisted my body. I was between a wall and a car, and I was just stunned that happened, and it hurt me a little bit, but not enough. So sometimes when I'm enraged, I fantasize. I fantasize of being having superhuman strength and smashing a car. It's just such a vivid fantasy I have of like, ugh. And writing that out and pretending that it's real. I just wanted to see how that would look on paper. So for Cambirianachi, imagine being able to heal your father, who you can tell is sick, by sinking your hands in your chest and taking it out. That is powerful. And then for the twins, for Kende and for Kehinde in particular, because she's the most fixed, because she's had to be, I think you harden when you've been hurt that badly when you're still developing as a person. She didn't allow a lot of magic, but she questioned so many things. She questioned, she's like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I see that? Or so that's the way it showed up in her life. And Taya, who's a lot more open, a lot more boundaried, never questioned. She was just in and out of things. It's, drugs can do that to a person. And just being open enough to do drugs in general can do that to a person. So the decision, I guess it was a fairly easy decision. I didn't want to have to convince the reader to believe in a whole new world. I just wanted to, like, what if? Just for a moment.
We could talk for a long time. I will not show you that much longer, but I want to show you things. So I annotate and decorate my books, and I just wanted to show you like some of the things I did in the book. Hold on, let me see. I'm gonna hold it. So this is like I use stickers and washi tape.
That's so beautiful.
And then I wanted to make sure that I would come back. So this is the first time I was like, oh, there's queerness in here, yay. And then like and then I wrote so much food. I have like beautiful. The word beautiful shows up like your writing. Jesus, like your writing was just exquisite. Like I was just like, it is so like it was a pleasure to read. Like and like good job, editor, because
yes, good job, editor, for real.
Yeah,
but it's good. She's won an award for editing, so I'm just like, yes, thank you.
Yeah, because she did a great job, because I found myself reading and being like, you know what, that was just enough. This is a prompt for me to write some more stuff here, because it was a chapter that I really enjoyed. Yeah, it was just enough, right? And I like when writers are just, they're just like, just trust your intuition here. You know what I mean? It'll be fine. It's okay. Just trust yourself. You understand what's going on. I love it when you see Kambirinachi reaching out through the narration and being like, you know what, I'm gonna tell my story, like it's going to be me. It's like, and then the font changes, and I'm like, what? Like the chapters get shorter, and then things get a little harder for me to understand, but I was fine with that. And just like, oh, it was so, and then it got me thinking, like, if our trauma told our stories for us, what would our stories sound like, right? And how often does trauma tell our stories for us, right?
Sam,
and
let me tell you something.
This is the last one, where I was just like, I love this book! I love it. Where are my stickers? Where's my highlighter? And then, like, yes, it was, and then the sticker says, always be you. Yeah. And I was just like, where's Francesca? I have questions. I have to thank her for writing my book, the book for me, even though she let other people read it. So it was great.
Thank you so much, because yeah, I didn't know what would happen. I literally, it took so long because I was doing other things and I was working, and it took losing my work permit and being in like this horrible immigration gray zone for me to send the manuscript to Arsenal, the publisher. So it means so much to me to, like, I live on a busy street. It means so much to me to have people like get it, you know, like it means so much to me hearing you connect with parts that I thought were just for me, you know, and so thank you so much. I had another thought and I just got emotional.
It's cool. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to, I'm going to ask you what's next. I want you to tell us what's next.
Okay.
And where we can find you if people want to find you. Obviously, everybody has to read this book. It's amazing and powerful, and I'm so grateful. Yeah. So what's next for you? What are you working on?
Okay, so I have two sorts of seeds I'm working on, but I put myself in a bit of a trap where I said I have a few jobs and I love them, and I want to like keep learning and expanding in different ways. And right now I don't have enough time to write, but I'm fixing it because these two ideas, I've written one chapter for one of them, and I've written like a synopsis and a lot of notes for another. But I really want to commit because it's my favorite thing to write and to have people read it and dig it. Oh, I remember what I wanted to say. You said when your trauma speaks for you, or tells your story. And let me tell you how, like in this moment in my life, I'm trying to take control of the story that I'm telling myself, because just in my personal life, I'm seeing how my trauma has just been like telling the story, being like, yeah, that happened because of that, and this is because of that. And it's just how it is. And I'm like, but who said? I've just made up rules. I just have an enforcer in my head of this like absurd rules. I guess the rules are for me to suffer. I don't know. So I'm working on that. Good. And I love, yeah, I really, I work it out through my fictional characters, right? So when you said that, I was like, another sign, but yes. So yeah, working on writing more. I really, yeah, it's my dream is coming true, and I want to show up for it. Yeah.
Well, I'm here to remind you that I need more stories. And so when it gets hard, just remember that I'm waiting. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Are we understood?
Absolutely. Yes.
I just want to thank you so much for just being amazing. And I really appreciate your graciousness and sharing yourself with readers through this book, because this is a book you can't write without having gone through it. Like you can't write this if everything has been good, right? You can't. And so thank you very much for what you're able to share. And I can't wait to see what's happening in the future. You're always welcome to come back and engage with the ONYX Pages community. I am your fan. I am your stan. And I will read whatever you write. And so this is great. That's it. We are done the interview. Because I'll just now go on saying all the things I love about what's written. I'm going to stop now. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Welcome back. I hope that you enjoyed my discussion with Francesca Ekwuyasi, and I hope that you squealed and gushed along with me because it was so good. 3 things I want to talk about before we get to our card, and the first is taboos. If you're a writer, what are some of the taboo topics that are from your community that you think really need to be explored and could potentially be explored using speculative fiction? My second reflection is about consumption. It was really powerful to hear Francesca talk about disordered eating and about like the women in her lives who engage in disordered eating. I have a history with disordered eating. There are women in my life who have histories with disordered eating, and it's not easy to talk about. Certainly in North America, the image that I see whenever I'm confronted with the topic of disordered eating is a very, very frail, usually quite young white girl. And that's not the prototype for disordered eating, and certainly wasn't a way for me to learn about my own patterns and to heal from them. So being able to write about consumption and desire and excess and restraint, and to read about it, but to hear Francesca write about it and to talk about how important it was for her to do so was really powerfully moving for me. And of course, what happens when trauma tells our stories for us? That's something that I'd love to hear about as well, because anybody who's experienced trauma knows that trauma can create thought distortions, and thought distortions in their extreme can turn into just lived realities that are disassociated from our day-to-day lives. I am not a psychologist, psychiatrist, or anything. I'm just talking about my experience and experiences of people in community. And I really think the cost and the impact of trauma in our lives is a topic that gets explored really thoroughly and really well in Butter, Honey, Pig Bread. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. What happens when our trauma tells our stories for us? And now to choose the Harvest of Survival card. Let's see how well it connects to the conversation with Francesca Ekwuyasi and the reflection question. So I'm gonna choose this one. And this is another quote by Octavia E. Butler. Self is body and bodily perception. Self is thought, memory, belief. Self creates, self destroys. Self learns, discovers, becomes. Self shapes, self adapts. Self invents its own reasons for being. To shape God, shape self. From Parable of the Talents. And the question is, what are you discovering about yourself in this time? And I think that is an exceptional question after having read Butter, Honey, Pig Bread, after having heard Francesca talk about it in conversation with me, and certainly just even in the reflections that I talked about, what's taboo, what happens when our traumas speak for us, and consumption, this question of what are you discovering about yourself in this time, defined as however you want, I'd love to hear more about it. So make sure that you include that in the comments below. Why am I asking you to respond to this question? Because we are going to be doing a draw for one of Melanin Eclectic's reading planners for 2022. There are 4 things you need to do if you want to be entered into the draw for this one. That is, like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video, and number 4, answer or respond to the prompt question from the Harvest of Survival affirmation deck. What are you discovering about yourself in this time? It was really, really nice to chat with you. I'll see you in the comments below. Remember to read with purpose, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.